Welcome to Cure the Next Big Thing Syndrome, the three-step prescription for a MarTech stack that delivers. Hi, MarTech. I am Brandy Starr, Chief Operating Officer with Tegrita. We are a marketing strategy consulting firm supporting growth-minded organizations like yourself. We bring your marketing strategies to life through marketing automation and the technologies that surround it. I have been in digital marketing for 20 years. When I first accepted my first marketing role, Google was only 3 years old. It is, hard to believe. We were right on the cusp of the dot-com burst. Thinking about my first next big thing, it was email marketing. I can remember, going through the process of starting to really do email and figure out where that fits in. In addition, I was voted the top 50 women you needed to know in MarTech in 2018 by MarTech Exec. I am a certified customer success manager, certified agile marketing professional, and some of my key areas of expertise are around marketing automation, marketing planning and road mapping, content experience, and buyer's journey. A fun fact about me is I was born with two teeth. Can you say hashtag overachiever? I actually appeared in Ripley's Believe It or Not column in the Washington Post the year after I was born. So now that we've gotten a little more acquainted, let's jump right in. So when we think about MarTech, we delivered modern marketing health checks and tech stack evaluations for some of our clients. And as a part of this process, we always conduct stakeholder interviews with marketers in different roles across the organization. Some of the common things that I hear in these interviews is we use insert technology because our director used it at their last company. I also hear, I really wish we had a technology that does that. And in the technologies that we've been provided that they already have, a technology that does just that is actually in the list. I also hear we use insert technology here because the vendor threw it in for free or offered us perks. This seems to be a really big trend right now, people using things because it was thrown in or bundled with something else. Likewise, I also hear that marketing wasn't even involved in the purchase of the technology, but they kind of make the best of it. So many marketers don't know what technology they have, why they have it, who in the organization owns it, and how well it meets their needs. This is very challenging, and this is one reason why so often I hear people blame the technology for not meeting organizational objectives. So if we think about, in this continued drive to find the right technology tool for the best results, many of you are still suffering from the next big thing syndrome, or some people call that shiny ball syndrome. You are in the constant pursuit of an antidote to your marketing ailments, and you suffer from a touch of FOMO, so fear of missing out. The hard truth, though, is that more technology isn't always better. And a healthy MarTech stack that delivers on its promises requires thoughtful strategy, integrated solutions, and dedicated resources. In this session, you will get all the details on a proven practical three-step prescription for a healthier MarTech stack. You'll take away how to quickly and effectively, number one, evaluate your current marketing stack. Number two, identify the gaps in technology plus strategy and resources. And number three, develop an actionable strategy to get the most from your stack, including successfully leveraging what you already have and wisely choosing what you still need. And that may even include the next best thing. But the thing is, we are no longer going to chase that. So here we go. The first thing is evaluate. We want to figure out, how do we really look at our current marketing technology stack? Okay, so number one, we need to look at all technology and define the job to be done. So every technology is purchased for a purpose. And generally, that falls into one of a few buckets. So, number one, automation of workflows. Many marketing technology solutions support use cases related to automating tasks that are too time consuming or too complex to complete manually. They also support streamlined communication. Modern marketing includes use cases that streamlines communication, allowing for personalization and leveraging machine learning in order to market smarter. And then finally, we have some technology that is used to generate insight. MarTech solutions should do more than just pull data. They need to be able to draw actionable conclusions that support your use cases for better decision making, optimizing campaigns, and revealing opportunities and gaps. So that's number one, is look at what is the job to be done, figure out which of these buckets it fits into, and be more specific in what is this technology meant to actually accomplish within the business. Okay, so number two, we need to evaluate the current functionality against the job to be done. And what happens a lot of times is we get caught up in these bells and whistles, and we really don't think about the actual job to be done. So, a great example of that is, if you lived in Miami where it is scorching hot the majority of the year, and I try to sell you a car that has heated seats, yes, that is a bells and whistles. That is a great functionality, but it's not going to be that beneficial for you. Your car's job to be done is not going to be to keep your bottom warm. Because in Miami, that's just not a thing that's needed. So you really have to evaluate the current functionality of the technology against what you actually purchased it to do. Because the bells and whistles don't matter if they don't actually align to your use case. Okay, so number three, we want to gather team sentiment for ease of use, effectiveness, and opportunity. This is a part of the process that a lot of people don't think about. You want to talk to all of the users, or if you're a large team, at least a good sample size of the users to really understand team sentiment. If it has a clear job to be done, the functionality very much aligns to that job to be done, but everyone on the team absolutely hates the technology, your stack really isn't performing the way that it should. So we want to get the team sentiment around how easy is it for them to use, how effective do they feel it is in achieving their business objectives, and what are opportunities to use the technology that you're not currently using. You should be able to grow into your technology. You don't want there to be a ceiling in terms of what you can do. All right, number four is going to be compare competing technologies in the space. Technology is changing rapidly. There are new things popping up every day. As we look at the MarTech 5000, that is now over 8,000 technologies. We look at that year over year. You see an abundance of new technology every single year, and that number is growing. And so, even though you may be happy with the technology, it is still good to do a comparison to competing technologies, and also consider those smaller technologies. Quite often we look at the big names, the more holistic platforms that can kind of do everything. But there are a lot of small niche technologies that may align to your job to be done and may better align to the way that your team works. So you want to do some comparison of competing solutions so that you can feel confident that what you have is right for your organization. And then last but not least, we want to score each technology using an alphanumeric score. And so generally, I like to look at that score in being able to say, number one, how effectively does it do what it's intended to do? And number two, how does the team actually feel about it? And I'll talk about that score a little bit more later on. But when we actually put some numeric values to this, we can easily compare technologies to each other. We can look at the gaps in our stack. We have a really good understanding of what we have and how we are able to use it. And so that is key for evaluate. And I always like the quotables to take away, a key summary of this section. And this quotable is best in class does not necessarily equal best for you. It is perfectly okay to not choose the best in class product. Technology that is less popular and more niche than what everyone else is using could be a great choice for you. And so this is why we always have to think about, we like to use the term proven practice instead of best practice, because there is no best across the board. What is absolutely fabulous for one marketing team is a nightmare for another. And so we always have to think about what is best for you. Okay, number two is identify. We want to identify the gaps in technology plus strategy and resources. And this part in parentheses is actually really key here. We don't want to just look at gaps in the stack, because what you have in your technology is only one piece of it. If there's no strategy behind that technology, there hasn't been resources that have been properly aligned and trained, then you still have a gap. I have seen companies that have like world-class technology stacks that many marketers could only dream of, but they are still struggling because there's no real strategy behind it, and they hadn't put enough resources in place to manage that. And those resources could be internal, they could be external third parties like us. That's why we exist. But you really have to think about identifying the gaps in your stack as the people, process, technology, which includes the strategy in there. Um, all right, so I think this is probably my favorite slide in the whole presentation, because this grid, although it looks super simple, is like magical. And so I'll talk about what that looks like. So number one, across the top, we have all your marketing use cases. Here, I just have 4. Depending on how robust your marketing efforts are, you might have 30. But what we want to start by doing is to clearly identify the use cases that we need to solve within our organization. And those use cases could be deploying follow-up communications for new purchases. That may be a use case. Managing events, nurturing sales prospects, creating marketing and sales alignment. I'm using some really high-level generic use cases, but you really need to think about what are your actual use cases that you want technology to solve for you. Then going down the side, we are going to have all of the technologies in the marketing stack. And so, again, I just have 4 listed here. I often do this sort of grid in Excel just because it scales very well to go left, right, up, and down. But we want to list every single technology going down. And then this is where we will start to fill this in. So I have some basic examples in here. So for use case number 1, we are using technology 1 and 2. And so for use case 1, tech 1, we are giving that score an A1. And so A is representative of the score around how well it meets the job to be done. So that's what I'm using the letter for in this scenario. And 1 is going to be representative of the team sentiment. We are Eloqua partners, so I'm very much used to using the Eloqua scoring model. And so I have aligned my process of scoring to that sort of same mentality, where it's A, B, C, D, with A being the best, D being the worst, 1, 2, 3, 4, with 1 being the best, 4 being the worst. And so in this scenario, technology number 1, aligned to that use case, it's scoring an A, which means it is nailing it. It is doing exactly the job that needs to be done. It's doing it extremely well. And because it gets a 1, that means the team really likes it. The second bullet here is identifying which marketing department. In this case, this example comes from a large client. And so marketing operations is the owner of that technology. And then it has the integrations. And so in this example, it is only integrated with CRM. And I have intentionally not called out what these technologies are because I don't want you to focus on that here. And then technology number 2 also aligns to use case 3, but you can see it's not performing as well. It only ranks a C in terms of the job to be done, which means it's not totally failing, but it's by far not succeeding. And then the team is also lukewarm on it as well. In this case, the campaign execution managers are using this, and it's not integrated with anything. And so we would have use case 2 might be technologies 2 and 4, use case 3 might be 1, 2, and 3. You would go through for every use case and fill in the boxes related to the technology. When you are evaluating that technology specific to the use case. So for example, for use case 1, technology 1 is scoring an A1, but let's say it's also used for use case 3. It could be ranking a D1 in meaning it's not using that use case. And then once you have identified that, and so that's what we're going through is identifying all the gaps, that's where you're able to then look and see where do we have space. And there's lots more things that can be put in here depending on the company. Some people will write more specifically what the technology is doing, the specific functionality that's being used. In some cases, you could do a little blurb that's a summary. You can really expand this out depending on how deep you want to go. But what I've done here is to really just start with the basics in looking at how are we ranking it, what's the score for that technology, who owns it, so not to say who all use it, but who really is the owner of that tech, and what is it currently integrated with. And so then once you have filled out the whole grid, you've aligned everything to use cases, you've scored it, etc., that should then help you to be able to see where the gaps are. This is something that I generally like to do as a conversation. So once we filled out this grid, get your team together to actually talk about this to see where do we see gaps. We've got 3 technologies that align to use case 1. Is there overlap between them? Are there 2 technologies that do the same things? Is there something that you may get rid of? Or you may say, you know what, use case 1, we're able to get close, but we're kind of missing this. Or all the technologies for use case 1 are kind of lukewarm or they're failing. And so that's where you would be able to sort of highlight, or, I've done this in a workshop format where we have this grid printed on a big sheet. We kind of put stickers to represent things. There's lots of ways you can go through this process, but you really want to get into and get a good sentiment around where do you have overlap, and not saying that all overlap is bad, because in some cases having overlap is perfectly fine. Like multiple technologies to do the same thing, they may do it differently. But in some cases, you don't even recognize the overlap. Like I've gone into accounts where they've had 3 technologies that literally did the exact same thing in almost the exact same way. But one of those technologies also served a lot of other purposes. So there were 2 that they could get rid of. That freed up budget, or once they were able to sunset those, that would free up budget for some of the things that they identified are gaps. What you may even find is that you identified use cases that you really don't have any technology for. And not every use case can be solved by technology, but most can be supported by it. And so that may be another opportunity there as well. So this is, the work goes into getting everything here, but that is really only the first step. Once you get it in here, this step 2 in the prescription in identifying the gaps, that is looking at the tech. When we think about the strategy, that really comes into the use cases. So, for example, you may have a use case that is around deploying nurture emails. Like that may be the use case. Well, a part of what you are factoring in is how are we able to do that following modern marketing principles? So how are we able to personalize? How are we able to use digital body language in driving decisions? How are we able to segment? And so you may see that there's a technology that can meet the use case sufficiently, but your strategy of being hyper targeted, really focused on the sales process, focused on personas, or using an account-based approach, you may not have a strategy for that technology, or that technology may not support your strategy. In this process, when you're also identifying who owns a technology, think about how much of their time is devoted to that. I've seen clients who have a marketing automation system, which is generally the center of the MarTech stack, with no one really to support it. Everyone kind of quasi owned it. It was like a dotted line that they kind of supported it. Well, you can't have the most important thing in the stack not have proper resources aligned. And that was why they brought us in to really be that system administrator and kind of own things. So again, start by looking for the actual gaps in the technology, then layer on the strategic gaps, and then layer on the resource opportunities. Because in some cases, you may see we don't need any new technology. Our stack is working great. What we need to do is invest people in the right places, or we need to put more of a strategy behind this. Okay, so my quotable for identify is going to be when identifying gaps, you should consider at minimum how effectively it meets the use case, the sentiment of the team, and how it connects to the overall stack. And so those are the three things that I have on the slide before. But I want to highlight that at minimum because there is so much more that you can consider going through this process of identifying the gaps in your stack. And I definitely encourage you, to obviously you can't go through the whole exercise before the conference is over, but I do encourage you to kind of think about the things that I'm saying here as you engage with some of the sponsors and technology vendors that are a part of MarTech. Like, where do you think that there may be gaps? Who do you want to talk to today? Okay, so moving on to number 3, which is develop. We want to develop an actionable plan to get the most value from your stack, including successfully leveraging what you already have and wisely choosing what you need, maybe even including the next big thing. So once we know what technology we have, how well it's meeting the business objectives, why it was selected to what it was selected to solve, we've identified the gaps. The final step is going to be having a stack that delivers, is developing the strategic plan. So what does that look like? Number 1, educate. We need to level up the understanding of the technology. So include both your strategic and technical resources in training. If you don't fully understand the capabilities, you will never see the true value. One thing that I do when I do Eloqua or HubSpot implementations is I always make sure that at least for a part of the training that we get their strategic resources involved. Quite often the main training is for a campaign execution team or a marketing operations team, but I always try to get demand generation, the VP of marketing, anyone that owns the strategic side to be involved in that technology training so that they fully understand the capabilities, so that when they are developing strategy, they can do so with the technology in mind. We want to line up behind the technology. We want to understand the technology's capabilities and leverage those capabilities to enable our strategy, to create a strong customer experience, and to be able to deliver on our business objectives. Next, we want to integrate. This is, in my opinion, probably the unfun part of the development plan, but I'd venture to say almost the most important part. We have to create a consistent and seamless data flow between systems that extend your capabilities and elevate your decision criteria. We need our marketing technology stack to talk to one another. In general, when I am choosing marketing technology or working with a client to help them choose technology, I do factor in things that can easily integrate. But in some cases, you can find the perfect technology. It just doesn't integrate with other things. As long as it has the capability to build something custom so that you have that data flow, there's the one view of the truth, all the buzzwords around this. It is important that systems that make sense to talk to each other do. Not saying that every technology has to be integrated with every other technology. In most cases, you get things integrated with your marketing automation or integrated with your CRM, and sometimes they integrate with each other. But we really do have to think about integration and helping the data to flow. Next is going to be optimize. We want to evaluate and refine the current usage of all technologies, including our processes, and leverage that assessment to streamline and optimize. So we talked about the evaluate portion of this. We want to use what came out of all of our conversations and things around evaluating technology to optimize. How do we optimize our processes? How do we optimize the way that we're leveraging the system? Especially if you've been using technology for a while, generally after the 18-month to 2-year mark, that's where the dust has settled on a new tech and you really have your arms around things. That's the ideal opportunity to optimize. And then that optimization should be iterative, every so often, and there's not necessarily a right cadence for that, but you should be consistently evaluating how you're using things and how it aligns. And then number 4, last but not least, is going to be update. You want to update your marketing technology stack. Retire unused or undesired technologies and purchase the desired tech to fill the gaps. So that goes into that identifying the gaps in the stack. We want to update our stack so that we have the right technologies in it. All right, so that is our quotable, or that is our section, and here's our quotable. So avoid the next big thing syndrome by first focusing on the technology that you currently have before seeking to purchase new technology. We want to try to get the most out of what we've already paid for or identify that it's not the right thing. So I appreciate you all attending this session. If you'd like to talk more, here is our contact information. But I'd love to talk to you about your technology stack and evaluations, your strategy. But even outside of, if you want to have a conversation, I do always like to share our learning hub, which is activate.tagrada.com. We publish a lot of great resources for marketers at all levels to just really help you with your technology and your strategy. Generally, everything's ungated. We don't use a ton of forms. So we do encourage you to visit our Learning Hub. You can always subscribe to our Tag Circle, which is our community, and receive emails with some of our content updates as well as other things. And then I also invite you to visit revenuetakeover.com. If you like what you heard in this presentation, we have a book coming out later this year that really talks about lining up behind the technology and how we leverage marketing technology to drive our revenue growth and customer experience. So those are 2 action items for you, but I am here for questions if you'd like to talk. Enjoy the rest of MarTech.